Welcome back to Framework and to our coverage of David Fincher's filmography. Today, we are going to be talking about The Social Network. My name is John Bernard. I'm one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, is the other host of Framework, Al Schwartz.
That's me. I'm Al Schwartz. And we have reached up to 2010 now. David Fincher's movie about the founding of Facebook, which is widely considered to be sort of his masterpiece, is it not?
I mean, a director like Fincher, who has many potential masterpieces, I don't know. It
Right.
depends who you talk to, but yeah, probably this is probably the one. I don't know. It's been very popular, well received.
I have seen this cited a lot as like one of the greatest films of the decade, of the millennium,
Hmm. Yeah.
which sounds more grandiose than it is when you're talking about a movie that came out 10 years into the millennium.
Right.
Um,
Right.
those are practically the same thing, but it doesn't. It's widely recognized as this essential film, and I've seen it referred to as sort of the defining film of an age of some sort, of an era, and I'm a bit confused by that, to be
Hmm.
honest with you. I find this is kind of a strange movie to be hailed as a masterpiece because, to me, I think it comes out to be a little less than the sum of its parts, and but even more than that, just that it doesn't strike me as being like an exceptionally good fish or a particularly amazing fowl. And what I mean by that is, like, as a drama, it's not particularly moving or searing. As a comedy, it's not really laugh out loud funny. It's been accused of being both too cruel and too kind to Mark Zuckerberg. I think the balance is tipped towards too kind over the last couple of years. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
but there's this question of like what is this? Like, if it defines an era, I have no idea. I don't have no idea, but I'm hard pressed to say exactly what it says about that era.
I am in the camp that would call this one of the best movies of the last 10 years, maybe the best last 20 years. I I mean, watching all these again, I don't know if it's the greatest David Fincher film. I think it is heavily in contention for that title, and I think it's excellent. I love this one. This is going to be fun, I think.
Well, what I'm
um,
saying is, it's to me, it's difficult to define, which I would think would hurt its reception. That, at least outside of like elite film critic circles, uh,
mhm.
you know, be the making it difficult to nail down exactly what it is or what it's about, uh, would hurt its reception with the general audience. And, like, I mean, it's like, is this a legal thriller? Is it a
No,
character study of Mark
somewhat.
Zuckerberg? Is it a
No.
satire of something? Um, it's a movie about Facebook to a degree, but it's not really like saying anything explicit about the internet or social media's effect on our lives, even as that effect has become much more pronounced in the ensuing decade. It's more that the internet and social media or the company of Facebook, the app, is more of a MacGuffin for sort of like rise and fall type parable.
Hmm.
Um, I still, I've now, having seen it several times, I'm still not quite sure what I'm watching a lot of times, but it is so eminently watchable. Um,
Yeah.
it just it starts strong and it never really flags. Like, there's no like lull through the any
Hmm.
portion of this movie, um, and it's both difficult to define and impossible to deny in a way. Um, let me I want to read a little excerpt from the end of Roger Ebert's review when this came out, where he
Oh yeah.
said, "Despite the baffling complications of computer programming, web strategy, and big finance, Aaron Sorkin's screenplay makes it all clear, and we don't follow the story so much as get dragged along behind it. I saw it with an audience that seemed wrapped up in an unusual way. It was very, very interested." Um, and I thought that was such an interesting way, or a good way of putting it, that you're watching this movie, you may not be particularly moved by any of it or particularly shocked, but you are very interested in all these twists and turns.
Yeah, it's an intellectual film, not an emotional one.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think Fincher tends to be an intellectual filmmaker, not an emotional one, on the whole.
But he's capable of being a very visceral, you know, stylist. I guess he can punch you in the gut when he wants to.
Well, I think there are some gut punches in this film. They're just sort of uh, character
They're
to character, absent criminal behavior. There's no serial killers, obviously. There's no action, no real thriller elements to this film.
I think that makes them
Uh,
not gut punches. I mean, not just be semantic about it. I think that it's a cerebellum punch or something. You know.
well, I mean, it's the betrayal of friendships and
Hmm.
stuff, and like you're frozen out of this. You're gonna lose $300 million because you fucked up just now. You know that kind of thing. Uh, you know, elaborate fuck yous played out over the stakes of a business and stocks and things like that, which is tough to do. And this film does it as well as anyone does. I would say the this sort of cutthroat nature of business and the way it can drive people who are ostensibly friends apart, even if this isn't actually true to what happened with Facebook. I mean, it mostly is, but you know, an enormous amount of dramatic liberty has been taken in this to kind of make those scenes and make the those gut punches kind of hit harder and feel, you know, more relatable, I guess, when you're dealing with a bunch of assholes.
Well, again, this is what I keep like coming back to is that it's it's surprising to me that it hits so hard because I think of it as being sort of a jack of all trades in all these areas and not really like all out in any of them. You know, like you talk about this, the elaborate fuck yous and takedowns, and there's some pretty good like insults in this movie, but you could certainly like imagine a Armando Iannucci take on this material, where the insults
It's
and
pretty
fuck
good.
yous are like way more scabrous and
Yeah,
elaborate, and it doesn't like
but,
go all the way that
but
way.
there are some masterpiece lines of dialogue in this,
No,
though.
there are fantastic lines of
You
dialogue.
know, like there's some incredible visceral lines that just like, oh yeah, that defines exactly what this conflict is personally. The one that I always come back to, you know, is if you guys had invented Facebook, you would have invented Facebook.
Yeah.
That's I mean, at the end of the day, you know, that's sort of an undeniable thing, and that's kind of what's, I don't know why you might imagine the film goes easy on Zuckerberg. He's clearly the guy in this movie. Uh,
Well, does it go easy on Zuckerberg? This is something else. Like another thing that
oh boy,
it sort of
uh,
does, but doesn't go all the way at is it's not a full on evisceration of Zuckerberg, and it's not a
no,
like full blown character study about like this weird personality. Like it's not. He comes off bad in this movie. We agree on that.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of torn on this. He comes off like an asshole for sure. Like he's not particularly sympathetic, but he's also, you know, clearly a genius as presented here, and clearly the engine behind this entire thing.
Well, that I guess that's true, but it's also like I don't know. This is probably something I'm bringing to it. Um, and maybe it's sort of incidental to Aaron Sorkin not really understanding like the ins and outs of computer programming or caring about Facebook as
Well, he just leaves it
a
alone. Yeah.
site. Yeah, but I'm not actually. I don't get a sense from this movie of like what his genius breakthrough is. It seems more
Hmm.
like he was the first to stumble onto something, and he just sort of fixated on uh, developing it kind of monomaniacally. Uh, but not that like he is a once in a generation computer brain that like cracked a code that nobody else could. I don't know that the the computer code of Facebook is something that nobody else could have written or anything like that.
No, I'm sure it isn't. I mean, but I also don't know much about, you know, the deep end of computer programming and how these things get done. But I think it's kind of undeniable that, you know, Mark Zuckerberg created a thing that took over the world. You know, and whether he kind of lucked into that or not, he did the thing. You know, like it. I mean, you could make the same kind of argument about Steve Jobs, the other Aaron Sorkin computer biopic character. You know, did he kind of just stand on the shoulders of the geniuses who actually created the tech and
it seems to
market it correctly.
it seems to me that,
Like,
I mean, yes, there's always going to be an element of that because nobody
mhm.
just invents out of, you know, the Bible black emptiness of creation. Like it's always coming after whatever, you know, happened before you came along. But I feel like there was more of an element of actual creation in the early days of like Microsoft or PCs than, you know,
Oh, without a
Facebook is a
doubt, yeah.
more successful iteration of Friendster or MySpace, but those things existed beforehand. And you know, he didn't invent the idea of a social network out of whole cloth. Um, he
So why did Facebook become what it is, though?
that's
That's the question.
that is a good
Like,
That's a good question. It's not really one that the movie asks, though. The movie like takes as a given that this is
mhm.
a world-changing innovation that they have hit on, and
It's
that
true.
required a certain genius.
Fair to do, though. Fair to do that with Facebook,
I suppose so.
especially now, 10 years later. And I mean, the only real scene of innovation and brilliance that you get. I mean, I guess there's a few more, but like the big one, I guess, is sort of that that walk hard moment, when the guy's like, "I just wish I knew what her relationship status was," or
Yes,
whatever.
that's
And you know,
pretty great. I'm sure we'll
I
get to the
yeah,
cast later on, but Joe Mazzello as Dustin
right,
Moskovitz,
yeah,
great little supporting performance in this.
yeah. This was the first time I realized it was the kid from Jurassic Park. That was
Yeah, yeah.
fun.
It took me a while to realize that Joe Manganiello was a different person um, than that.
Oh, you thought that
Well,
Joe Manganiello was the kid from Jurassic Park?
yes, because I didn't know who Joe Manganiello was. Like I hadn't seen. I started seeing the name popping up, and like not having seen Magic Mike or whatever like was his breakthrough. I was like, oh, the kid from The Social Network. Like, I mean, he got buff and became like super. I was like, I guess that could have happened, but I didn't like bother to look it up. And then sometime I don't know. I saw like some superhero movie or something. I was like, that's definitely not the kid from Jurassic Park.
That's great.
What did I derail us from there? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's yeah, we were just talking about Zuckerberg as genius, innovator, creator, or kind of just lucky. And I mean, I guess it's a combination of all those things. Of course, he was there at the right place at the right time with the right idea, and he was the guy as a result. So I don't know. I think the film does a pretty good job of representing that. He's not exactly. I guess he's kind of presented as like a Steve Jobs figure, a
Yeah,
generational genius,
I mean,
or
it's sort.
maybe he's just sort of an asshole as well. That's what makes it feel that way.
Well, he's certainly presented as sitting on some sort of golden goose, uh,
Hmm.
like egg that is way more unique than I think the idea of. Again, maybe it's just my thing. I think it's sort of happenstance. Like social networking was going to be a big thing, and which one became the dominant one in the marketplace. Uh, I think there was quite a bit of happenstance there. There was more than it's not solely Mark Zuckerberg's will to power that brought that about. Um,
No, I mean, but that is a component, at least in this film. The his willpower
Certainly.
is kind of strong and driving, and all that. But yeah, I mean, on the other hand, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is a figure where nobody's like lamenting, what we would. Thank God, Mark Zuckerberg uh, was born in
Well,
America.
no, that's the thing
Like
is.
thank God.
So another thing that this movie like is not. It's not like a even like the way Zodiac we talked about is so grounded in trying to get all the minutia of the history right. This is much more recent history that you could uh, like research. I think a lot more easily than a lot of Zodiac stuff. You could get input from a lot of the people who were involved in it in real time. Um, but it's not really a meticulous,
No, no,
journalistic
they're making shit up.
retelling of the founding of Facebook. It's based on a book about the founding of Facebook that is sort of regarded as like kind of the work of a fabulist to some degree these days. I think um, the guy who wrote it is not considered a very credible source.
I tell you what I thought of while I was watching this,
Mhm.
and this is probably because I just watched this film recently, Citizen Kane. Uh, that was my main touchstone.
Can I tell you what movie came up in my mind a lot?
Yeah.
Lords of Dogtown.
It is kind of a
So let's compare
combination
and
of the two.
contrast. Yeah.
Yeah. uh, yeah. I mean, Kane. Hey, look, diving into this. I mean, we're going to talk about Mank pretty soon, which is sort of why I
Yep.
watched Citizen Kane. But that's a guy who was not exactly born to wealth, but it was bestowed on him. It was, not earned wealth. Like he managed it correctly, whatever. But like, he's a guy who kind of it was thrust upon him.
Born
He
on
didn't.
third
He
base.
wasn't.
You know.
Yeah, he wasn't the creator. He wasn't the innovator. Uh, Zuckerberg is more than that, but at the same time, he's still got that quality of he's just sort of a guy who ended up being incredibly important and wealthy, and it doesn't fix all the shit that's wrong with him as a result. Like it's it just sort of brings out inner shit within you.
Yeah. So this is what I was saying. It's not a ruthlessly journalistic retelling of things. So it's not really concerned about capturing Mark Zuckerberg as a person, who
Right?
I think
He's an
subsequently
archetype
now,
in this. Yeah.
yeah, and now I think our view of Mark Zuckerberg as a person is like somehow. I'm generalizing here, but it's largely that he's worse than this movie portrays him as, but also like in completely different ways than this movie
Yeah.
portrays him as being uh, shitty. Like,
Hmm.
um, so that's okay. That's fine. I'm not faulting it for not being that. Um, but it's not, I guess, as committed as Citizen Kane is as a sort of character assassination is a bit strong, but I don't know, a work of anti-hagiography, if there is such a thing, you know.
Yeah, it has more respect for Zuckerberg than Citizen Kane has for Hearst, for sure. Uh,
Right.
but it also has some issues.
Well, so the upshot of that, though, is that because Citizen Kane is committed to sort of like going after this guy harder, like Charles Foster
Hmm.
Kane, I think, is characterized in a much clearer way where we can sit here and dissect his flaws in a much more direct way. And, you know, social network's doing a similar thing where it's like his flaws are sort of tied up with the things that allow him to flourish in the business world. Um, but it's a little less clear in the social network. What I mean, he's a little like movie Asperger's syndrome.
Hmm.
I don't know how accurate that is to real life Asperger's or to Mark Zuckerberg himself, but you could certainly like have seen a way like there was an angle here that they're sort of doing where he's somebody who's really inept in person to person social interactions, and so he like moves all like creates he digitizes social interaction so that he can like
Hmm.
be on a stronger footing there. But I don't know, the movie doesn't go all the way with that. I feel like it's not like it's about how he creates this world and then he starts living online because he's more comfortable online than he is in person. It's more that he just uses that as a stepping stone for his like ambitions of class mobility, I guess. Like this is weirdly like
Yeah.
a movie about uh you know comedy of manners almost like in some senses it's about uh his class resentment, except it's about like the differentiation between the 1% and the 0.02% of classes. Like,
Right. I mean, he is a member of the elite already. Is the thing like
mm-hmm,
that is the contradiction that the movie can't entirely square. I have to agree with that. But what you're talking about, that aspect of him being of class resentment and upward mobility, is I think one of the main reasons I believe this to be such a good or great important film and a significant film that belongs on a list of best of the century or whatever, best 10 years or whatever, because it has these uniquely kind of American ideas built into the text of it, that it is kind of exploring through this guy, through something that we all know and understand, Facebook, um, through a figure, a cultural figure that we all kind of have some idea about. And also, within that, because there's an enormous amount of class resentment in America all the time, there's
mm-hmm,
also the rise of the nerds kind of narrative going on. Uh, uh, Dorks, socially awkward, the people who live better online, kind of rising to the front of the culture and having massive success and kind of revealing the ways that they are assholes as well. Like that is also been a major cultural thing going on over the last 10 years. And that, in that way, social network is kind of prophetic. I think this version of Zuckerberg is almost, it's almost too pat in a way. Like it's like I said,
Mm.
archetypal earlier. This is kind of the angry nerd
Yeah.
character. And
Well,
but 10 years ago, how much was that an archetype? How much was that like something that we see readily all the time? And how much was this film just sort of prophetic about how important that character would be over the next 10 years?
so this is the thing that I find most interesting about the movie now, and that I go back and forth on because, like I said, I liked this movie a lot when it came out. I was like, that was a very, engaging, entertaining 2 hours. And then when I started seeing stuff about, oh, it's, defines a generation. It's the best movie of the century. And I got a little bit of that, her reaction. Um,
Yeah.
but so now I look back, and I thought at the time, like the problem with this is that it's a movie about an internet company that changed the face of society that isn't really about the internet and doesn't really understand the internet or have. And now I feel like 10, 11 years later, that weirdly, it plays a bit better to me. Um, it's not, I think it's less dated because it's not, it didn't attempt to do a snapshot of how the internet had changed culture in 2010 when it came out.
Yeah, I'm really glad there's no like like close-ups of like information traveling across fiber optic lines in a computer, like like in Swordfish or something. 'Cause that could have been this movie.
Yeah. And but there's still some stuff here that like as I was watching it, like it doesn't come across as a particularly like strong or coherent thesis, but it addresses a lot of things about how going fully online will change society over the next 10 years or 20 years, I guess, since this movie is set earlier than it was released. But in only like kind of oblique ways that, if they're not entirely accidental, they're at least like very protean forms of what they would take later on. And one of them is, like you said, that the idea of toxic nerddom, and
Yeah.
you know that the idea that social media, as embodied by Facebook, is sort of built on grievance and misogyny, uh, is something that would
Yeah.
bear fruit in ways that, like, this movie doesn't
Turns
get to be
out.
wrong about that because it doesn't go like very far in saying like what that means in the longer term, but you can see the sort of the seeds here um, of that. There's a line at the end about how like every creation myth needs a devil, and if this is a creation myth about Facebook, then the original sin of Facebook's creation is misogyny and the whole like farm animal thing, um, and that
Yeah.
certainly is something that would come to define a lot of online interactions over the years.
Yeah, there's this casual cruelty and spite and malice kind of
Mm-hmm.
baked into social media now, or so it seems. And all of that is kind of here in the cauldron or the cradle of it. It is all presented within this society. Like this is a rough woman movie on women, for example. Like the girls in this
Yeah.
movie, yeah, it's not great for them. I mean, you got Rooney
Nope.
Mara basically playing a symbol. Basically, I mean, it's a good performance. She's good in it. Great dialogue. That character is kind of defined by what she is to Zuckerberg, which is fine. That's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Every other girl in this movie is crazy or like sort of an accessory who's kind of there in the background to play a video game with their shirt off or ask dumb
Or
questions to explain something about the internet or business. Like
or
that's all
both.
of them.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, let's
And
circle back to that is later, because we're going to
yeah.
talk about Sorkin later on, and I think that'll
Oh
provide an
yes.
opportunity
Yeah.
to get into that a bit. Um,
Mhm.
but right now, I want to fixate on sort of the things where that you can see the seeds of things about the internet in this movie, even if the movie doesn't pursue them. And definitely the
And they
idea
haven't happened yet. Yeah.
that resonates with me Yeah, but I mean, they were already kind of happening in 2010. Maybe they hadn't happened in 2004 when this movie's set, but they were starting to happen.
Hmm.
And the whole idea of toxic nerddom, and I do feel like you talk about the casual cruelty that comes in online platforms, and you can certainly see that that baked into the founding of Facebook in this movie. But also just the idea of, I don't know. To me, there's a certain level of like victimization and grievance that is sort of built into to online identities in a way that I don't enjoy, um, and that manifests in a lot of ways. But one of the ugliest that you mentioned earlier is the way that nerds have sort of taken over the world, uh,
Yeah.
and they're still pissed off about it. Like they're, and that I mean, and one of those lines that sums it up very well is the opening scene ending with, "You're going to go through your life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd, and it's because you're an asshole." Um, and that is, maybe that's one of the more fully formed ideas that this movie has. But the idea just of grievance and of everybody like uh, decide like viewing themselves as a victim is played out through that class consciousness stuff we talked about earlier, where you know somehow uh, that I think online life, because you're allowed to curate your own existence so much, like it is easy to perpetuate that sort of grievance to the point where somebody like Mark Zuckerberg can be a 23-year-old billionaire and still consider himself the scrappy underdog that gets no respect, um, or how the Winklevi can be born just obscenely rich and end up getting a $65 million payday for nothing more than coming up with the general idea of a dating site for college kids. But they still feel like they were just incredibly hard done by in this. You know,
Yeah.
or Sean
Yeah.
Parker as characterized in this movie. He really like seems to buy his own line about how he conquered the music industry and Napster's this huge success, but he's still like compelled to plot petty revenge against his perceived enemies in the hedge fund world. Um,
Yeah. I mean, that's something they saw clearly is that is the level of entitlement and grievance within, I guess, well, young people, young nerds, young the basically the privileged.
mm.
This Harvard. This is like the richest people at Harvard, and and they're all still pissed off at one another because somebody is incrementally higher on the pecking order, and yeah, it's the way of the world now is what it feels like. Like they got this so right in a sense, or maybe it was just there and they reported on it, and of course, it came out that way because it's so true. It's
Yeah, it could be that that's something that was just impossible to miss when you like look
yeah,
over this story how it actually played out, but it comes through in the movie, and I think it, even if
yeah.
like Aaron Sorkin wasn't qualified, and I think maybe to his credit did not really attempt to make sweeping statements about how the internet would affect generations that grew up on it. Uh, Again, you see seeds of this in how that plays out.
I think I credit Fincher for pulling that out of Sorkin's script. Honestly, I
Yeah, okay.
think I kind of. I mean, I watched a lot of the special features on the disc, and there's back scenes footage of them working together,
Mm.
Fincher and Sorkin working with actors together. It's pretty impressive stuff. Fincher's the one who's right all the time, by the way. The Fincher is the smart one who really gets it. Sorkin, obviously a smart guy, but
Yeah.
it's funny how many wrong things he says in that behind the scenes footage.
Well, I think
Just
it's a little easier to be the right person when you're operating as like the editor rather than the author.
yeah,
When you
yeah,
get
for
to
sure.
be handed something that's already sort of fully formed, and just say, you know, I see like this is not just a block of marble. Like I see the guy here, but I think you should add a little chisel to this shoulder here. Just dick that part off. Uh, I don't know. I think it's okay for them to share credit. I guess is all I was saying there.
Yeah, it's Sorkin's best script, I think.
Mhm.
This is my favorite Sorkin thing. So, I mean,
Um, before we move on to story, there's
Sorkin's the whole thing.
another thing. There's very basic idea here about how like uh, digitizing social networks, which is Zuckerberg's big innovation, destroys his real life friendships, such as they are. Um,
Hmm.
Joe Basanello kind of hurts that. I think, there's a sort of powerful dramatic moment when Eduardo, looks at him with tears in his eyes and says, like, "I was your best friend. I was your only friend, and you did this to me." I'm like, well, but there's Dustin Moskovitz over there. Actually, they still seem to be friends.
Hmm.
Seem to be just fine. But anyway, like that's a kind of basic idea.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's a little bit like on the nose, maybe. That would be one
I
of
think it's
those
actually to
ones.
the script's credit.
Um,
It doesn't belabor that over much. But another like little moment that stuck out to me was was when um, Mark's cheating on his he's using Facebook to cheat on his art history final, and
mhm.
he mentions like I he's like, I just put this up and ask people to start talking about it, and I drop it every once in a while just to stir the pot. It's like, oh, you know that's a very small moment in the movie, but it's sort of like that's trolls and bots and troll bots. uh, you know, the way that disinformation would end up taking over large chunks of social media uh, by just bad faith people stirring the pot. Um, so
Yeah,
incidental, accidental, I
yeah.
don't know, but it's a little seed that's there.
Well, I mean, I think again, this is another thing that I think makes this such a significant film is that it is very prescient about what drives online discourse and interaction. And
Mm,
it would be much easier to say these things now, 2021, than it would have been in 2010 because a lot of stuff hadn't happened. We're talking about like the way we figured out how to, well, not we, but like they have figured out how to weaponize social media and fraudulent information and bad things and
mm,
bad faith arguments and all this stuff. It all seems to come directly out of this class in Boston that created all this stuff as presented in the film. It feels one to one, even
mm.
though that stuff hadn't happened yet when you watch this movie. It's got that Starship Troopers thing of kind of like knowing what was coming somehow, and whether it was lucky or really smart about it, it nails it. It feels like it's a true representation of what must have formed these forces.
I'd say it's at least pretty smart and definitely really really lucky
Sure.
about some of this stuff. Uh, but because I think like if this movie had been made 7 or 8 years later, even you know, by Sorkin especially, like he would not have been able to resist having like big long monologues about the nature of misinformation and trolling and how the internet
Yeah.
has negatively affected society. But because this was at a time when he didn't really understand that and wasn't that interested in understanding it, it just brushes up against these things in a much more subtle way than his proclivities would allow.
This is a thing. I think this movie really makes it's beneficial. All Sorkin's weaknesses and idiosyncrasies really help him in this case. Like the fact that he's writing so many assholes that's great for him. He's really good at that. His contempt for millennials allows him to make these characters less
Mm.
heroic than he normally would. Like he can make them be assholes because he doesn't like the younger generation. All that stuff works to the film's
Yeah, there's no
benefit.
idealists.
Yeah.
There's no idealists in this film, which is interesting as a Sorkin artifact, I guess. Nice little Easter egg in that uh, scene I mentioned about the he's using Facebook to cheat on his art final, and the the alias he uses for the fake account he created was Tyler Durden. It's nice.
I missed that. How did I miss that all these years?
um, at least I read that on the internet. I didn't actually go back to double check it. I hope it's true because it's a nice little in joke. And it's also like there is really a way this is like a spiritual sequel to a Fight Club in
Yeah.
some ways, like we were just talking
Yep.
about, because it is about entitled like the grievance and anger of the like most pampered, well off white boys.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, this feels more like what happened actually. Like the political unrest and distance. What it ended up actually looking like was going online and doxing somebody and destroying
yeah,
somebody's life online with pictures of them nude or whatever. That's sort of where that energy actually went rather than destroying works of corporate art. It's
Yeah, I mean, and it kept sort of snowballing after that. I mean, Facebook's now been, partially responsible for genocide in like Indonesia.
well,
And
that's another thing is the sort of the carelessness of the power of this. No one really understands in social network, not even the people making it in 2010, uh, how powerful Facebook ultimately will be on the global stage, and there's sort of a laissez-faire attitude towards that power presented here
I
as a result.
I want to disagree with you there. I think there is
Okay.
one there's one person, I guess we'll call it a person, in this film that does understand the ominous implications of what these sort of stupid fuckboys are unleashing on the world, and that is the score. Um, so
Yeah, the score.
so let's go into that because all right, this goes more
Yes.
into something that I'll say I've been sort of critical about this because I do think that the story is less than the sum of its parts, but those parts are like off the charts amazing. So that's like not as
Hmm.
big of a slide as it sounds like, because the performances, the cinematography, the like, seamless integration of digital effects into a real world setting. These are absolutely untouchable, and the score is definitely part of that. You know, um,
Oof, what a score.
it is by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and it is so absolutely not the soundtrack you would imagine if you were just reading the screenplay. Um,
Hmm.
and
Stroke of genius
oh,
hitting
absolutely.
him for this. Yeah. Hmm.
Because you can easily imagine a version of this movie that relies on needle drops to carry the action, um, and that
Oh yeah.
version is so much more forgettable. Because like the Reznor's droning, like anxious score that he puts over this, just is a completely different layer to the film that it adds over it, and it makes it seem like the music realizes something no one else on the screen or the page does, and that's that we are basically watching a custody battle over Skynet.
Yeah, it's unlike anything I had ever heard up to this point too. This is this combines so many different kinds of music. It seems like I mean, it's recognizably Reznor's sound,
Mm.
but like there's that opening score piece over the credits, which is an amazing sequence. Just him walking home
Hand covers
while
bruise. It's called. It's one of the best little
wow,
pieces of music. I mean, that's one
yeah,
where I'll be totally hyperbolic. Like one of the best pieces of music of the millennium. Absolutely.
it has this sort of melancholy main chord progression,
Hmm.
which is that almost sounds like something you would see in a regular drama. Um, almost, it's very catchy and immediately kind of hooks you, and it's has this feeling of pain to it and melancholy. But then there's
Well, it's
this,
got that like
this
hummingness under it. It's
yeah,
like it's
this
like a
this low
restlessness
level.
and anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like dread and fomenting rage underneath.
And then the most
It's
beautiful little sort of sad, just 3 note piano thing. It's incredible. And the rest of the score is also very incredible.
yeah, I love that he uses like the electric version of Hall of the Mountain King for the crew scene.
So good,
Like,
so good.
I was trying to think, is that like, are they kind of part of the old world? Is that what he's thinking? Trying to assign something to that because it really sticks out.
I don't know.
Uh,
I just think it
with
fits great. It's like no, there could be no better piece of music to score a race to.
yeah, it might just be as simple as that. It has that the social network sound too.
Yeah.
The Reznor electronic thing.
But
Yeah.
but the thing that really that stood out to me when I was watching it last night was it really shows how fully a score can define a movie's vibe and alter its whole character. Um,
Hmm.
and what it brought to mind to me was like because I was thinking like, man, you could definitely have done like I said, like the version of this movie where they're paying for pop songs to do this like like Martin Scorsese would score this.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
it would probably not come off as well as he would, but besides, I mean, what it brought to my mind is like this is a totally different. this movie is entirely transformed by there were two routes in the woods, and they took this much less traveled route. And it made me think of how like the stories about how Star Wars almost had a disco soundtrack.
Whoa.
And like, man, how completely different would that movie be? How completely different would the whole of pop culture look if that had happened? Because I guarantee you, like Star Wars may still like be a fun, cheesy sci-fi movie with a disco soundtrack,
Hmm.
but it does not become this sort of immortal mega franchise that encompasses every platform of media over the span of generations without the just gravitas that John Williams brings with the orchestral score there.
Yeah, that can't be understated. Absolutely.
And
And I don't think you could understate how important the score in Social Network is. I think it's one of the
no,
best of the last 20 years for sure. Like, this is an extraordinary score. I believe this won the Oscar. This was one of the things it won for.
oh, and I hope
Rightly
it
so.
fucking well better have.
Yeah.
uh, but as just to finish my thought about the flip side of that Star Wars thing is, I was also thinking like it can go the other way too, where I think of a movie like Flash Gordon, for example,
Hmm.
where after that came up pretty close after Star Wars, and you could see them being like, "Well, Star Wars had orchestra, so we should go with that." But thank God somebody realized that this is a movie that just cries out from the core of its being for Queen. Uh,
So we've been kind of talking about Sorkin here a bit, and I think I already said this is, I think, the best thing he's done, because of various factors that work in his favor here. Having somebody as good as Fincher adapt him certainly helps.
mhm.
Like, Fincher really gets the nuance of every piece of dialogue in this. It really feels like, that everything has meaning and importance. None of it's just thrown off as just like, oh, well, this is just to establish that he's smart. And none of that. Everything they're talking about is key.
Yeah, well, I do want to say like for as much as I've been kind of bagging on this movie for I feel like not having a strong thesis that it gets across in the end. Um, and maybe it's like straining a bit to figure out something like truly resonant to say with this story. But on a scene by scene basis, it is an absolute like tour de force of making every character besides Rashida Jones uh, really pop. And every dialogue exchange, except for her last line, just really, really
Yeah,
sing.
that's terrible.
Yeah, it's juggling multiple timelines and multiple framing devices. Just like really so crisply and clearly. Like, you never feel lost for like a second in this movie, even though it's doing some very strange structural things. That Ebert thing was saying, like it's getting pretty far into the minutia of coding and intellectual property law and business organization, like at the same time, um, and
Stocks
and
diluting,
all
yeah.
that. Yeah, stock dilution. They don't spend any time on that, but you understand like what it means to those people right away. Um, and it's doing all that stuff also without a protagonist that's particularly relatable. Um,
Well, you got Wardo. You got.
he's not the protagonist though,
Eh, eh.
and they don't have like a goal that's like very laudable or even all that clear at the time. Like what Mark wants Facebook to be is not that clear. He doesn't seem to know it. He can't articulate it, even though he's can usually say exactly what he wants at any time. He'll say it in a way that pisses off whoever he's talking to and whoever whoever's help he needs, but he can usually articulate his own desire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this gets to Eisenberg's performance,
Hmm.
which is great. I, I've I don't want to say I've cooled on it a little bit. But I have, I guess, because I think that mostly it's a gift of a role, like
Hmm.
if you're a competent actor who has Eisenberg's natural qualities, you're going to be very successful in this role. It's very well.
Well, isn't every role in this movie a gift? Like,
Yes,
is there any like
yes, they are.
any character that speaks more than one line that doesn't get like some really choice lines? Uh,
Rashida Jones is a bit of a
oh yeah, she is.
that's a rough one.
She's
Yeah,
she's the lump of coal.
yeah. uh, Good on them getting Rashida Jones. That helped.
She's a great
That
actress.
was
It's
the
not her
end.
fault that
Yeah,
last line is just total nonsense. Like,
yeah.
I
Even
mean,
if you don't think he's an asshole, it still doesn't make sense.
yeah, before it's not just that. Like the way they have her moon over, like, ooh, 22,000 hits in an hour is just like, blah. But
Yeah,
that bromide at the end is just this incredible, like it's an incredible turd that just sounds like something, but it's nothing at all. You're not an asshole. You're just trying to be like. That makes you an enormous asshole, lady. Like, what the fuck are you
yeah,
even talking about?
and in fact, he is an asshole. Like
Yeah,
without question. Like there's not a lot of gray area on that. He is definitely an asshole. He seems to accept that he's an asshole. In the movie, kind of admires that he's an asshole to some extent, but he's definitely
yeah.
an
I mean,
asshole.
the final scene of him refreshing stuff makes him. He's sad that people think
He's
he's an
definitely
asshole.
sad.
He doesn't
Yeah,
want people to think he's an asshole, but he's not going to meet anybody
not be
on
an asshole.
their level to in order to defray that that feeling that gets built up.
Yeah.
He's going to insulate
Uh,
himself further with money. I mean, that's the thing. Is like, I guess one of the ideas about social networking as an idea and online living your life online is that it allows you to insulate yourself from sort of the harder edges of actual human interaction. And that's not really what this movie's doing. Like, it's more that he's going to use his fabulous wealth to do that, to insulate himself.
I mean, it's kind of implicit in that this is the thing he invented. You know that this sort of remove is, you can get past the unpleasant busy work of finding out if she's single. Like you can kind of skip over some of the more difficult social interactions. I mean, I think that it kind of decides that that is an outgrowth of his mm,
But again,
misanthropy.
it's not something where uh, it doesn't feel like he's using, like he's a user of his own product. He's not getting high on his own supply here. Um,
I think he is, just that it's not a major thing.
it
It's not a
it
major
feels
part of the
more, well, it feels more like to me like even the walk hard moment you talked about earlier.
story.
It's not like he realized this because like, I'm going to create something that's what I want to, how I want to do social interactions. It's more like this is what other people want, and he has these, his eureka moments are like an alien figuring out, oh, this is how humans work, and this is how I can exploit them. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. Like again, there's a version of this movie that is more of a character study about an antisocial personality and how they are trying to create a pocket dimension with social rules that apply to them, or that they're more comfortable with. And I don't think it really commits to that.
Yeah, because he's not actually presented as like a fully online guy all the time, even though
Mm-hmm.
he clearly is. But he has very few scenes of
Well,
him
there
being
it
an
wasn't
asshole
necessarily
online.
possible to be fully being a fully online guy in 2004 was not really possible in the way that it is in 2021. Because you don't have smartphones or whatever to like it, and the online community was smaller. But anyway, that's again, this is stuff that we can talk about, but the movie doesn't really get into.
Right.
So
I mean, I do think it's implicit in there. I think it's kind of part of the stew, and maybe that's what we're bringing to it to some extent. Maybe that's just taking our experiences with Facebook or other social media sites and kind of like thinking, oh yeah, that reminds me of that guy being a dick. Like that's there. And I think, but it's such a universal thing. Like this is really the only movie about social media in that way. I mean, unless you want to talk about like I don't know, like the Zoom movies that have been coming out, the horror movies where there's
yeah,
a haunted Zoom call or whatever. But this
there's
is kind of the
certainly
only one about like what this entire force means culturally.
there's certainly been attempts in the years since then, because I mean, and it's not like this is not, it's not fair to hold this against the social network because the online world was not the, it's not fair to hold it against social network that came out in 2010 that it doesn't it's not a very good examination of the social or the online world of 2018 or 2020,
Right.
you know. um, but like there's definitely been attempts to make movies that are explicitly about what living online is like in the years since then. I think the only two like good ones I can think of are Bo Burnham's Eighth Grade and Ingrid Goes West. Um,
Oh, yeah, those are more of a ground level kind of version of it. Yeah, for sure. Those are both good movies.
oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. They're not. I mean, they're not about the
I think
creation of those
that
things. They're looking at the effects of it.
I predict that the 2020s are going to be full of those, though. They're going to have so many movies about
Yeah,
that. You know, tons and
yeah.
tons and
Most of them will
tons.
be
And
terrible, and that's
yeah, probably.
Skynet won. Like
Yeah,
we live in that world now. That and we can't escape it. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. I don't think. Um,
doesn't appear to be.
but I think this is what I say. The social network actually benefits from not attempting that too much. And
Hmm.
that's something that I think in 2010 when it first came out, I held against it a little bit, and in 2021, I'm a bit thankful for. Like it's aging better because of that.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it probably lucked into a lot of its prescience. As most prescient things do. But I think that's sort of the thing that keeps it relevant and keeps it feeling like an important, great film beyond just sort of a very entertaining movie. At least for me.
Yeah, we talked about the screenplay briefly, but we didn't really go into to Sorkin. And I mean, yeah, I said he's gotten some uh, crap for his female characters and how
Sure.
that's they always seem to lag behind the men in certain ways. Though I do think like they pretty much all get some fantastic lines in this movie. And I think Dakota Johnson is phenomenal in her one scene. Um,
And a thankless role, yes. Hmm.
I don't know if it's that thankless. I think Brenda Song's role is extremely thankless.
That one's worse, yeah. Uh huh.
But I mean, it should be thankless, but I think he like actually gives her like way more character and shading, and than that brief scene requires. I also think I think she's fantastic. I think she's really underrated. Um, she,
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of her first like role where you took notice of her for sure. I believe, right? This is like when the
yeah, and
beginning of Dakota.
it's hard to say that she's like you know undervalued or anything. Like she was in the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, which meant that she was like in some of the biggest movies ever for a couple years.
Mhm.
Um, but not having seen those movies, I have a feeling that they didn't use her to her full potential. Um, she had a one season like quickly canceled sitcom a few years ago that was actually I thought very charming with her and Nat Faxon playing brother and sister. Um, and I don't know. I'd like to see more of her. I wish that, but I'm not so much that I'm going to go watch the 50 Shades of Grey movies.
Well, you should watch it. You should watch the Suspiria remake.
Oh shit, she's in that.
She's excellent in that, and it's this great physical dancing performance.
Really?
She's really great in it, and that I think that movie's quite good anyway. I'm a big fan of that. It's a weird one.
Well, it struck me as a movie that would be pointless to remake, so I just didn't bother with it.
I mean, it's nothing like the first one, and mostly you'll see that in like the visuals of it. It's such a different film. It's
So
so.
why do it then? I guess that's what I.
Um, I mean, why do any Witch Academy movie? Like it's
Well, I think
it's
most
just
remakes.
it's creepy and weird.
I think the more successful remakes are because you have a very strong like plot hook
Hmm.
that can be updated. Um,
Suspiria lacks that, yes.
yeah, this is entirely like a sensory experience. So like, I don't know why
Yeah.
you'd like just set yourself like, hey, I'm going to try and do something that is exciting, engaging in a sensory way. And by the way, judge me against this, you know, masterpiece of the genre. Like,
I mean, I'm not prepared right now to make a full throated defense of Suspiria. It's been a little while. The remake. It is a challenge of a film. A lot of people did not like it. It is like 2 hours 40 minutes. It is an ordeal. Uh, but I remember that I do think it's pretty great. It's very entertaining, and I would welcome that conversation at some point in the future. Should you want to go with your newborn child and check out the new Suspiria film? The
geez,
fact of its existence was so odd to me, like that
absolutely.
that you would remake it for the reasons you were saying. and that it's a real director who did it. You know, this is not even a horror director, just like some guy who was like, I have an idea for this, and yeah, it's despite having none of the signifiers of Suspiria, 1977, it is still a very effective sensory experience somehow.
But it still seems to be like just you could just make your remake of Suspiria and not call it Suspiria, and probably nobody would call you out on it. Like you wouldn't end up in like two simultaneous depositions, the way that they do in this movie.
Right, because Social Network, yes. Um,
No, my only there is Dakota Johnson's great. Love her. I want to see her more stuff. I actually have no idea. She might be a terrible person for all I know. But who cares? I mean, as a performer, I think she does great with like the sitcom stuff that Sorkin gives her in that scene. Also,
oh,
great,
she's super good. Yeah, she's great.
also great in the scene. Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, he's great in this movie. This is a high watermark for Timberlake acting.
Absolutely, he should. I honestly, I was, everybody was impressed at the time. When I was watching last night, I was like, shit, he should have got like a Best Supporting Actor nomination for this. He's really fucking good.
I mean, yeah, I could get behind that. I mean, this is so clearly Eisenberg's film that I think he kind of sucked a lot of the oxygen out of the room with regards to the other performances. But they're all great. Everyone in this is terrific.
I think everybody recognized Andrew
favorite.
Garfield at the same time.
Well, yeah, it's his best thing. Like this is certainly his best performance, I think. And it made me wonder watching it the other night why he didn't end up. I mean, I guess he just got to be Spider-Man, and that didn't work out. But like, it seemed like based on this performance, this guy could be one of the big celebrities of the next 10 years, and it didn't really happen.
No, but Timberlake, it seemed like it was just teeing him up. Like he could have been an enormous movie star. I think I mean, it's maybe this ties back to us saying about how well, they're not even that bad of choices, but like how he got the opening, and maybe like if he took a couple more like supporting roles before attempting like I forget what it was called, like his big like sci-fi action
In Time
star. Yeah, that one.
bad choice.
I think it was a little too early for him to anchor a movie like that. Because I also think that was a particular type of movie. I haven't seen it, but just a type of movie that's a little hard to star in, where it's sort of like near future sci-fi. It's not like full blown space opera where maybe a pop star could fit in a little more easily. Like if it's like a Fifth Element thing, you can have a pop star in there, or even in a Guardians of the Galaxy or something. But when it's something a little closer to the Terminator or whatever, that's recognizably in our world, you kind of need a movie star with a particular type of sort of like rough edged. You need kind of a more muscular guy for that stuff, for a District 9 type movie. I don't know. That's closer to our world.
I think this is an interesting film in that, like, it has Jesse Eisenberg as the lead actor, who we would think, based on his appearance and general demeanor, is a character actor who should play supporting roles. But no, it turns out he's excellent as the lead in a film. Like, he's a great lead character. He's relatable. He has that thing where you can kind of get on his side because he's not this, a movie star persona. It doesn't make him right to play, movie star roles like Lex Luthor, but it makes him great for movies like this. Timberlake, on the other hand, I think is a clear character actor with movie star looks.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's most effective in these kind of supporting roles. And I think if you try to give him that role, that movie star role, I think he seems kind of small. I think he seems kind of, doesn't have quite the gravitas or the strength of some of these other guys. I mean, because he's physically small and slight in a lot of ways, but he also just doesn't have the.
But that doesn't hold back Tom Cruise,
Well, no, Tom Cruise is sort of a once in a lifetime. Like, he doesn't have what Tom Cruise has. Yeah,
true. But I think it's a combination of he has got movie star, leading man looks, and also he came into acting with already like leading man level of fame.
Yeah, and baggage.
It becomes a little more complicated to slot him into a supporting role. Turns out this one here in Social Network is the absolute perfect supporting role to slot him into. Um, but maybe he needed a couple more things like that, which are a little harder to come by before attempting to,
Right.
launch his franchise. Um, one of the
Yeah, I mean,
more
wasn't he like almost Green Lantern or whatever? Like he was like almost on the edge of getting a lot of superheroes, that sort of thing. That seems like, an obvious thing to happen to him at some point. It could still happen.
well, yeah, maybe it's so good. I mean, because one of the things that's shocking about this is that uh, he's got. I mean, it's not. I guess maybe it's not shocking because he kind of proved this doing Saturday Night Live, but he's got comedy chops.
Hmm.
That
Oh yeah,
was surprising to everybody, I suppose. But when he did Saturday Night Live, um,
it's a funny movie, isn't it? It's a really funny movie.
yeah. Well,
I
like I
mean,
said, it's constantly funny, but it's rarely like laugh out loud funny.
it's clever.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
constantly clever. That's true.
I mean, the Winklevoss scenes are pretty overtly comic. I mean that
Yeah.
scene with the dean, I have no idea how that made it into final cut of the film, but it is very funny.
Well, and I mean, you have those lines that just pop up that I'm 6'5", 220 pounds, and there's two of me is very amusing.
Yeah, he does get a lot of those guys get a lot of the best Sorkin comedy lines. Like people are just going to see us in skeleton costumes chasing the Karate Kid.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's such a great line too. It's made even better by just the reaction shot after that. Or they're just like, what? Like, even though you understand exactly what he's saying, you also feel for the guy who's going, what the fuck is that?
That guy's great too. I forget
Yeah,
who he is or his character
Max
name.
Max Mignella is his name. You know what?
Yeah.
Did you know Aziz Ansari auditioned for that role?
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Oh, thank God. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I don't like Aziz Ansari.
I am agnostic.
Uh, I,
Agnostic. I don't care about it. Sorry.
I think,
um,
yeah. I don't want. He
no, I don't need him in Social Network. That's for
no.
damn sure. He is probably the worst part of Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
That first guy gets bumped out.
I'll take the bland guy over.
Brendanowitz. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember his name, but at least he's not. I just. But the worst thing about Parks and Rec for me is the attempts as it goes on, especially to sort of like, I guess, not rehabilitate the character of Tom, but maybe like, oh, he's actually like got a heart of gold and he's a secret genius for marketing or whatever. And like, I mean, one, it gets pat to me after a while the way that everybody in a Mike Schur sitcom turns about that their their learning disability actually makes them a super genius in some particular category. And I found it particularly unconvincing. And that it's
Well,
Aziz Ansari's whole thing is that he's good at being smarmy, and then when he tries to be like a thoughtful artiste, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I buy you in this role.
well, not to step entirely away from Social Network, which we already had plenty to say about.
Yes.
But I do think Tom Haverford was a victim of that show evolving. Like
Yes.
there was already not a whole lot of place for that character in that world, and as that show got nicer and more genial and more about being nice and friendship based and how happy and kind everyone was, there was less and less reason for Tom Haverford to be there other than that he was just a character on the show.
Well,
And everyone liked Aziz
yeah,
Ansari at the time, so
but
they
it's
kind of had to force him into that role.
yes, and the Parks and Rec ethos is such that it had to let all of their characters end up like conquering the world in the end, and
Yeah.
that it cut against the like comic conceit of that character to begin with, which is that he's somebody who's trying to be Justin Timberlake's character in The Social Network, but in a small town in Indiana.
It's not a bad idea.
It's
It's
yeah, that's a funny comic conceit,
yeah.
but then you have him succeed at it. I'm kind of like, wait a minute, I don't buy this anymore.
I mean, you contrast with Pratt, who was, the most lovable he's ever been on that show. He started out as an asshole character, if you recall. He was a
Yeah, and then he became a
kind
lovable, like kind of lovable loser. And then when they had him conquer the world, and it turns out he's actually like a genius as being a children's performer, and that makes him a worldwide celebrity. I'm like, all right, fine, yeah, I know.
he pulled it off though.
Nobody,
That character totally
everybody
worked.
succeeds eventually in
Yeah.
this world. Like that's,
Yeah.
uh, But
You
anyway,
think she's president at the end? I think she's president at the end. Is that
oh yeah,
widely
absolutely,
assumed?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All
Um,
right.
so I mean, I'm glad that Aziz Ansari is not in Social Network. Is all I'm saying. And maybe we're going down this road because we want to avoid like a little more complicated to talk about how great Army Hammer is in this movie.
Oh
Given
yes.
recent revelations that he is apparently a cannibal sex criminal monster. Uh,
Apparently, it seems almost too crazy. All that stuff that it's almost like a parody of Me Too at this point with the shit that's getting thrown at
yeah,
him. It's insane. It's ridiculous stuff.
it's
Yeah,
so
he's
much
excellent in this
worse
movie.
than like the when the Simpsons did the thing about how Troy McClure was trying to get around the stories about his romantic attachment to fish. Like it's so much farther down the line than that. What they were trying to exaggerate it to the most ridiculous degree possible. It's so much worse. So anyway, Armie Hammer's a monster.
Yeah, that's like that's really hard. The cannibal
Yeah.
thing is a hard one to come back from. Even before the really bad stuff came out, I heard that and I was like, oh boy, that's gonna be tough. That's,
I don't even know if I heard the worst of it then because I mean I thought the
oh,
kills
I
was pretty much
mean, yeah, it got into straight Weinstein territory recently.
worse. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh, I suppose
he's
yeah. The
bad.
cannibal stuff was more like I suppose if this is like consensual kink stuff and they're not actually doing it. Anyway, the point of this is we're all pretty comfortable retiring Armie Hammer in the future, but it makes it more complicated the fact that he's really good as the Winklevoss twins in this.
He's usually really good. He's a very talented actor.
Yeah,
Like he's really good in a lot of movies. Unfortunately,
and this is a
this
really
one is very much included. Yeah.
this is a weird, difficult role that you like. You needed a very particular type of performer to do, like physically. It had to be, you know, a 6 foot something Aryan Superman, uh, and he is so good at in the role that originally they they cast another actor to play his twin, and eventually decided that we just want to digitally put his face over the other actor's face so he can perform both roles, which just
What a fuck you. What?
one of the toughest beats anybody has ever suffered for poor Josh Pence.
Yeah. Oh, they interview him on the disc, and he.
I mean, he kind of has to be a good sport about it. What choice does he have?
Yeah, he's like, well, I'm still in this Fincher movie, and I'm working with people, and it's for the best of the film. It's rough.
It
It's
is. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's for the best of the film, but oof, you know,
and it is for the best of the film. It totally works. It's a great effect.
yeah, it's stunningly great.
Hmm.
Yeah, you'd
Yeah.
never know. A lot of people didn't know that it wasn't twins. Like, and you still can't see the seams.
He wasn't really a guy before this. This kind of was his breakout in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I mean, this is kind of everybody's breakout,
yeah.
I
I mean, really,
guess.
it definitely was, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he was almost Batman before this.
Oh yeah. Oof. I mean, great bullet dodge there, I guess.
Well, it was going to be the George Miller Justice League. Like he was cast and everything.
Hmm.
And yeah, then we would have been stuck with cannibal rapist Batman, and so it's for the best.
Right. Yeah, it's it's weird how we process all this stuff when we're canceling people. And we kind of talked about this in the 7 episode too, or at least I did. But
Yeah,
it's easier to process when they're playing like unlikable villainous sorts. And I wouldn't call
hmm
the Winklevi villainous in this movie exactly, but they're certainly not the protagonists. They're not sympathetic. They're not even the
I,
sympathetic victims that Eduardo is.
I think they are sympathetic though, which surprises me every time. That they seem to like these guys. Fincher and Sorkin seem to enjoy them, and they lose in every scene, which
Hmm.
is fun. You never mind seeing them foiled, but
They lose in every scene,
uh,
but then I mean, maybe this is like the most trenchant statement about white privilege that the movie could possibly make. But they lose in every scene and then get $65 million in the like closing text crawl.
yeah, uh-huh. and They went to the Olympics and they didn't quite win. All that stuff. It's
Yeah, that is
you
like
know,
that is also one of like the most just brutal low key burns ever. They went to the Olympics, got sixth. Like
yeah,
is I mean,
yeah,
they went to the Olympics is an incredible achievement in any objective sense. But in the way this movie frames it, the fact that they got it's like they frame them getting second in that, you know, English rowing race as being this incredible, devastating blow. So sixth is just like, ooh, their stock's really
yeah.
fallen. As long as they're not talking about actual stocks
They're
that have money attached to them.
yeah. They are emblematic of white privilege in this film. Even though everyone is white privilege in this
Mm-hmm.
movie, they are sort of the the banner carriers for privileged elite, and so it is fun to see them foiled. I love them. I love that one of them is obsessed with rules of fair play. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
no, we can't do that. We're gentlemen of Harvard. All of that
Yeah,
is great because it's not it's there's nothing noble about it as presented. It's just dopey. It's just like
it's great.
you don't know what you're doing. You're being an idiot.
I'm
It's
just really
Matthew
glad
Miller.
that we didn't have Aziz Ansari there to overact the "you thought he was the only one who would think that was stupid" line. It's a
Yeah,
great
this they
line.
made the right choice. They made the
Yeah,
right choice. That guy is actually quite good. He's the right energy for our two Army Hammers. It's he's very fun in that. Um, yeah, those again are the funny scenes in the movie. There's other
Mm.
funny scenes, but those are like written as comedy. Um, yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I want to go back a little bit. Just, again, I feel like I've been kind of critical of a lot of this stuff, and I do want to like say again, like this is an absolutely magnificent script um,
yeah.
overall. Like it's trying to make like, the way that I say that I criticize this movie, but it's not trenchant enough about it at any particular point. But it's got to set itself a very difficult task. It's telling a story about real people, and that is a real story, and also not that engaging in a lot of ways, or not in obvious ways. And Sorkin really just squeezes every every scene for all it's worth. And you know, there's just parts when his dialogue is in its full glorious sail.
Mm.
It's just so entertaining. Without people are like moving quickly from one point to another, only to circle back to 2 points ago without pausing for breath, and they don't lose you in any of that. Um, I mean, even sort
There's
of hang a
something like
lampshade on it when she talks about. She has the line in the opening scene about like sometimes you say two things at once and I don't know which one I'm supposed to be aiming at, and then it's like dating a stairmaster. Uh,
yeah, it's all his best abilities
mm,
on full display. There are I don't know a dozen lights out excellent scenes in this movie, maybe more. Uh, all time classic dialogue exchanges, stuff you could see. I don't know. It's probably been done hundreds of times in acting classes across the country. All these scenes are such great bits of repartee and characters listening to each other, and like that opening scene. The big Rooney Mara scene. What a piece of writing that is. There's so much going on in that scene, and you do have to kind of you know keep pace with it. You kind of got to run to follow what's going on in that scene, but you can't. It
but
is all within reach. You hear it, you understand it. Final clubs. I don't know what those are. I get it from context.
yes,
What they're
I
talking about
don't
when they
think you
talk
do
about
have to
food.
run. I mean, if you want to follow every single beat of it and know every single bit of it, then yes, you do have to run to catch up. But I think the genius of that is that even if you don't feel like doing that, you get to the end of that scene and you still understand all the salient points. You understand
Mm-hmm.
that she is exhausted, saying, "I don't want to run to catch up with you, just so I can stroke your ego." Like
Mm-hmm.
that's why she breaks up
We
with him essentially. Like,
in the Benjamin Button episode, we talked about the nightclub scene, and what an incredible sound mix it is.
mm,
And watching it again, I was just like, yeah, it really is. But what is so impressive about that scene is that not only is the dialogue is it sound in such a way that it sounds like you're in a club and you are straining to hear what is being said. The stuff that is being said, you can hear it all, but it's really you kind of just get the gist of it because you're in a nightclub. and then it hits you with these big moments that kind of sum everything up. Like you can get a business card that says, "I'm CEO, bitch." And that is what you carry from that scene. Like you see what is happening there. You get the nuance and what is actually going on between the characters, even if the details fall by the side because there's just so damn many of them and
Uh,
you're in a nightclub.
what I carried away from that scene was him saying, "Do you ever think about that? The girl that got away in high school?" And Timberlake just widening his eyes and going, "No." Like,
Yeah.
have you not been listening to everything I've been telling you? uh, but yeah, no,
Well,
yeah, that's a fantastic scene too. You're right. You're right. There's just so many great individual scenes in this movie. Like every one of them just pops, and that's I think we should credit Sorkin for that. All his like quirks and peccadillos are still on display here, like the sort of like repeating dialogue. Um, I mean, that's a big part of what I'm talking about too. It's they circle back to things that somebody said like 5 lines ago,
mhm.
in a way that is so comprehensible. Like that's a particular gift of his, I think. Um, but also like there's the sort of sillier parts of it. Like he's so enamored with having people's resumes recited on screen that like at one point somebody recites
Yeah.
the resume of the Harvard student body. Uh, at another point, a chair gets the treatment. That scene
I
in the dean's office, like, that chair has been here for 300 years more. I don't know why I gave her a Maine accent, but
well, it's Boston.
yeah, it's up in the Northeast somewhere.
Yeah. There is I mean I feel there is some restraint here. Like you said, there's no idealist. There's no character being
Mhm.
idealized in that way, or elevated as a hero. I really like that. Eduardo is a victim. He's the nicest character, but he makes horrible business decisions.
Yeah, you don't feel sorry for him.
No,
I mean, not really.
constantly.
Like you, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess you feel sorry for him whenever he's on screen with Mark because you dislike him more.
yeah, but he's wrong. He's wrong about most of the choices. Is the thing,
Yeah,
and I almost
and he
feel
makes
like
the
this is
point
a
of
little bit.
like the line about you. You're mad at me because you were the business officer of this company and you made a bad business decision with this company. Like that's a that's a pretty salient point. um,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a little like it's still incredibly douchey. It's like, oh, you
yeah.
like you who has been trusted with fiduciary duty to represent my interests didn't think about how I was going to use all my efforts to screw over your interests. Isn't that your fault? Like, no, asshole. Like I gave you me giving you the benefit of the doubt is not, and you screwing me over is not a reflection on my character.
I mean, I don't know. I almost feel like it stacks the deck a little bit, probably in a way that did not that is a little bit more simple and pat than what the reality was. That I'm just assuming. I can't imagine Eduardo was as checked out on what was going on. As he appears to be in the second act of this film. And he gives him reasons. He has a crazy girlfriend. It is a failure of imagination on his part and a series of bad decisions and emotional decisions. So I kind of feel like it. I
But
don't
I
know.
don't see. I'm not sure that that is true.
Yeah,
That I mean, the part about the crazy girlfriend and how unfortunate that is pretty true. But in terms of a series of bad decisions, his decisions continually get overruled. So it's not like any of them really harm the company. Uh, and he's just a dissenting voice. I don't think it was a crazy or terrible idea to monetize the company earlier. Um, and I'm not even sure
I
that
think it is presented that way in the film, though. Like that
yeah,
that that it is cool, and cool is the commodity.
that is certainly something that uh, that comes across in the movie, and that is interesting. So let me come back to that in 10 seconds. But
Yeah,
I will say that this is a strength of Sorkin's is that maybe he does straw men sometimes, but he's
maybe.
good at allowing dissenting opinions to have like cogent thoughts expressed. And so like when he
Fair.
says, this is cool and it's fashion, like that's an important like insight that I think Zuckerberg has in this movie about how Facebook can continue to evolve. We don't have to just cash in our chips now that it's become more popular than we thought it would be, because it can continue to become something. So maybe it's fashion. And then Eduardo has the point that people still make money off selling pants, and that's a single line. He doesn't come out of that scene like with his perspective carrying the day, but I don't know. It was coherent enough that I'm like, yeah, that was a solid point too. Like, um,
Yeah, he's not a bumbling idiot. Like he has points, and yes, Sorkin is good at providing those. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just foreknowledge of what's going to happen that you can really see the way the wind is blowing early on in this, and you're like, oh, dude.
yeah, there is that.
Yeah,
It's unavoidable knowing
yeah.
like how that's going to go. You look like a fool in hindsight. Uh,
Hmm. Right.
being the voice of reason early on. But I guess I'm just saying that it was not. I mean, Zuckerberg's position was probably more unreasonable early on to think that it was going to continue to spiral up the way it had been. Something that I think that the one thing I think the script like gets to an insight about what makes Facebook special and what makes social networking special, uh, and how it relates to the sort of character of Zuckerberg is this very contradictory idea about how what Facebook represents in this movie, especially, is the democratization of exclusion. He gets this idea, he fixates on this idea because it's not. Again, I don't think he created it like when Friendster already existed or MySpace did, but he's obsessed from the opening scene with getting into the final clubs because they are exclusive and so forth. Like that's very explicit in that opening scene. And even if you don't follow every beat, you probably come out of that scene kind of remembering that part. Um, it slows down a bit for him to say that line about like why is this important? Because it's exclusive
Hmm.
and it's fun and it leads to a better life. And so that is the promise of Facebook, I guess,
Mm.
that it allows everybody to create their own club. That you get to be the bouncer of your club. When people send you a friend request, you could reject it, or you could accept it. And I suppose that's underlined by how the montage of him doing like the coding and creating of Facebook, uh, that's intercut with the final club party where they bus in all of the undergrads from other schools that just want to hobnob with the next Federal Reserve chairman, as Rooney Mara put it. But it's that he's trying. He can't get into a final club, so he's trying to create his own final club. And then he hits on something where, well, wait, if everybody gets to be the gatekeeper of their own club, that makes them feel empowered in the way that I want to feel empowered and validated. But also, it has this addictive quality to it, and it's not really as hard to get into.
I guess this is kind of the main thing in the movie for me is Zuckerberg's the character here, as played by Jesse Eisenberg. His sort of outlook on the world, his drives, the things that are important to him, and all of the need within this performance,
Mm.
despite being a abrasive, difficult person who kind of pushes people away every chance he gets. Um, that is kind of what keeps me coming back to this movie. I would say it's kind of what elevates it for me, and it's why I think Zuckerberg or Eisenberg seemed like he was a gigantic star after this. Why I was thinking he deserved the Oscar that year,
Mm.
and as I said, I've kind of come to the opinion that it's a gift of a role, and he is very good in it. But mostly it's the role itself. Um,
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he was still very, very good. I don't want to
yeah,
take
he's
anything away
great.
from him.
He's great. I think this is far and away his best performance, though. I would
Oh,
say.
yeah, sure, probably.
Yeah. Uh huh.
And I haven't seen The
Uh,
Squid and the Whale more than once or in 10 years, so
yeah.
I
Right.
think he was. I think that was a good one though.
He's good in other things. He's good. He's a good movie star. He's good in Zombieland. It's he has the thing. But I mean, this role kind of taps into a very, very present cultural archetype, as we were talking about,
Mm.
and so I think that gets him along a little bit as well. Um, but yeah, that wanting to strike back against the world. I mean, the grievance thing
Mhm.
became such a thing in the years after this movie, and that really feels highlighted in his performance. You know, he is carrying bitter resentment towards like everything, really, like
Yeah, I
every
mean, it's the whole
even his
thing is that
friends. Yeah,
why I mean, he's kind of especially like shitty to the Winklevosses for how he like freezes them
yeah,
out immediately, but it makes sense in the sense of you he's trying to create something he can exclude them from because they represent everything that
yeah,
he feels he's been excluded from.
yeah. We can't take you past the bike room exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Yes, but I mean that extends to just about everybody, you
Mhm.
know. I mean, not to the characters like, Joseph Mazzella that we don't really get much on, but like every other character in this, I guess not Sean Parker. I mean, ultimately that's probably, it seems like there's an implication that he's going to be a problem going forward at the end there in the coda. But yeah, even Eduardo, something nice happens to Eduardo, the Phoenix Club, and it becomes a point of contention, a point of resentment, something to hold against him, something to punish him for. I don't really put much stock in the whole cannibal chicken story thing that gets a lot of airtime in this, but it is structured in a way that it enforces this part of the Zuckerberg character. Uh,
No, the earlier parts are better though about showing what that represents in their relationship. How
mhm.
sort of marvelously efficiently passively aggressive he is about every time.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, it probably is a diversity thing, but you shouldn't worry about that. Enjoy it while it lasts. Like, that's great, man. Congratulations. You shouldn't even worry if you don't make it any farther. like
yeah. That's
the
an accomplishment in and of itself. Yeah,
yeah
all
yeah
that stuff's great. Yeah, I mean a little on the nose, to be fair. I mean, I think a lot
yeah,
of
but
the
it's
stuff.
also like I said, it's efficient. It's all they're both
Yeah.
on like one line, and
Hmm.
as he's leaving the room, it's it's a great
So
script. I like again. I'll say for I think this is an impeccably put together script for as much as I find the overall story somewhat peccable.
um, there is also the Erica Allred character,
Okay. Yeah.
and I'm still not sure how I feel about this. That she becomes so centrally important to his arc and his entire narrative is tied up in this thing, and I really think it works, but it does seem sometimes like that one interaction at the beginning of the film drives every single thing that happens afterwards in a way that is I don't know if it's diminishing or if it is or if it's just so kind of symbolically true of the truth of his existence that
Well,
he just got emasculated so hard by that one line about being an asshole that it's just a constant need to prove that or to shoot that down or to handle that and
I don't know. It I can see it both ways. Like it's both. It pops up a few times, and you could say that's like makes it trite. But I don't know if it that is his rosebud. And
yes.
in Citizen Kane, I think it would have hit that and underlined it harder at different scenes.
Yeah, well, Citizen Kane does hit that pretty hard.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. um, but yeah, I mean, like we return to that every 15 minutes or so. Whether it's the scene in the
I think it's
nightclub.
no.
Like did you ever get over that girl?
I
And
don't think
yeah,
it's every 15 minutes. I think it's every 30 minutes or so, which is, I mean, it's a couple of times, like once per.
mhm,
I don't know. Does this movie even have a 3 act structure? Maybe not.
not
But
really. Yeah, that'd be hard to figure out.
yeah,
Um, and I don't think it's a problem. I think it's kind of it has sort of a maximalist purpose in this, in a sense. It sums it up
I
in
think when they
short.
when they when they circle back to her, I guess other than I mean, he sees her in the restaurant and goes up to her. At that point, okay.
Yeah.
But after that, I don't know. It's a little. I I hesitate to call it maximalist. It's the later reference. I don't know. I guess the ending is so explicit that he's on her Facebook page,
Well,
and
I think she comes to represent to him like a hole inside him. Something. What is wrong with him? Whatever is wrong with him that he can't define is kind of just summed up by the existence of Erica Albright, who is not even a real person, of course. It's a complete construction, or not a complete construction. He was dumped and got mad about it and wrote online, but it wasn't her.
Yeah, it's not her name.
Yeah.
But
and
I think what is good about that, and maybe I'm bringing stuff to the movie myself, but I don't think the movie posits that if he could just get her to like take him back like romantically, that's what he's pining after. It's more that he wants her forgiveness, or not forgiveness. He at least wants her to revoke that asshole comment. If he could just get her.
Yeah. It's very unclear what his actual like real world desired result is here. Like it's like he's just kind of fixated on her as a result.
I think it goes back to nerd grievance, and he wants her to admit that actually she wronged him by breaking up with him.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's sort of willing to accept it. If he will just accept his friend request, he will interpret it that way, and then he thinks he can move on with his life. Whether he does or not, I don't know. You know, you and I had a disagreement in the Zodiac episode about what characters think will bring them closure actually brings them closure. But but this is much. I think this underlines my contention there that this is much more explicit about Fincher ending a movie by saying this character wants closure on this issue, and he will not get it.
Well, yeah, obviously that's what's going on here. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could say it was a more successful version of what they were trying to do in Zodiac.
Yeah, sorry. No, you could. I could not.
Okay,
but we'll do. You know what? We'll do our overall Fincher ratings at the end.
They're starting to move around a little. They're starting to, kind of jump around. I think I'm interested where it all ends. I do think this is the end of the lights out excellent stuff. I think this is.
I really loved Gone Girl, so I have not seen it since the theater, but it'll be interesting to read that. But I think that one goes in the upper tier.
I'm excited to revisit Gone Girl for sure, and it probably only has room to grow. But yeah, they're all really good so far. They're not all really good.
No, that's what
really good ones are really good.
That's on Dan Raven. I thought that. Well, we'll get into this when we do our final thing. But so far, my thing is I thought of him, Fincher, as like consummate professional, totally reliable, and now I'm struck by like, his bad movies I don't like.
I mean, yeah, there's some real bad ones in there. Although I don't know, Benjamin Button really lowered the bar for what a Fincher film could be. I think
Benjamin Button, fuck off. It is absolutely just lights out competency and just such utter nonsense. But that episode's already up and streaming, I assume. So,
right,
let's just let's close this out. This is a great film. Is it a defining film of the aughts or the 2010s, whichever era it's supposed to be? I don't know, but
I would say, I mean, any such list is stupid, in a sense. But what you're doing when you make a list of like the greatest films of the last 10 years or the millennium, you are highlighting films that have a significance to the millennium, to the times that people are living in, and sort of a resonance and an importance in that way. And I would say Social Network very much has that.
And I would say it's just absolutely watchable, no matter any moment. Like nobody really just like flips through the channels anymore and like sees a movie on and is like, oh, okay. But let's say you walk into a room and one of your friends is watching The Social Network. It doesn't matter what part of it is. You'll like stand there and watch that scene.
Yeah. Because it's a really good scene, as likely as not. It's probably really well written and performed.
Yeah, there's not I mean, I guess unless Rashida Jones is on screen, is the only time when you might be able to take a bathroom break. Anyway,
that's that.
Yeah.
Social Network.
Done. Onward to The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, which I have not seen. I'm going to go watch it for the first time.
Oh, this is your first time? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. We will see what you think. More serial killers. So,
I mean, Fincher's good at that shit.
He is. We'll talk about it.
All right. Look forward to it, man.
Bye.